I barely slept that night. My thoughts spun like a storm, circling that single piece of information. The park wasn't city property. It had once belonged to a developer who'd gone bankrupt and left the land unclaimed for years. The parcel was still listed under a defunct LLC. No taxes had been paid in over a decade. It was, for all intents and purposes, orphaned land, and that meant one thing. It was up for grabs. The idea felt insane at first, outrageous. I was just a dad, not a land baron. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Karen had spent so much time weaponizing rules and paperwork. What if I flipped the script? What if I used the system instead of just fighting against it? I called the county office the next morning, pretending to be casually curious. After some transfers, a very helpful clerk confirmed what I already suspected. Yes, she said. That parcel is in tax default. Technically still owned, but inactive. It's slated for auction next quarter unless someone makes a private offer. Could someone buy it directly? She paused. In some cases, yes. You'd have to contact the estate handling the LLC, dissolution, make an offer, and clear the taxes. It's rare, but not impossible. She gave me a name, a dusty-sounding law firm in Colorado that apparently still handled the defunct LLC's final affairs. I hung up, hands shaking. Not from fear, but from the wild possibility that I was actually going to do this. That afternoon, I sent an email. A week later, I got a reply. They were willing to entertain an offer. The price? Dirt cheap, literally. Apparently, no one wanted a sloped half-acre of green space wedged between streets and full of roots and liability. Except me. The moment the papers were signed, I felt something I hadn't felt since that first confrontation with Karen. Power. Not the abusive kind she wielded like a weapon, but the quiet kind. The kind that came from knowing I could now protect something sacred, and I wasn't about to do it quietly. I waited. Let her get comfortable again. Let her think she'd won. By week 3, the caution tape had started to sag. The signs had faded in the sun. People had stopped talking about the park entirely, resigned to the loss like it was some unavoidable tragedy. But I wasn't finished. The next step was simple. I had a surveyor mark the boundary lines. 2 orange flags went up at the corners. Subtle. Quiet. Then a contractor came by to measure the entrance archway. A local carpenter followed. Making notes and sketches, Karen noticed. I made sure she did. She stopped me on the sidewalk one morning, blocking my path like a gatekeeper from some twisted fairy tale. "What are you doing over there?" she asked, eyeing the clipboard in my hand. "Just taking some measurements," I replied casually. "For what?" I smiled. "Oh, you'll see." Her eyes narrowed, the tension behind her perfectly Botoxed brow starting to crack. "That land is under HOA jurisdiction. You can't just—" "It's not," I cut in. "It was never under HOA control. In fact, I own it now." Her mouth fell open, but no words came. "I bought it," I said, letting the words sink in. "Filed the deed last week. It's private property now." She blinked rapidly, processing. "That's impossible. You can't buy the park. That's public." "Was never public," I replied. "And now it's mine." She recovered quickly, her voice rising. "You can't just do that. There are regulations. Ordinances." "There are," I agreed. "And I've checked every one of them. I'm well within my rights." That afternoon, the real fun began. A fence went up, not orange netting, but a beautiful black wrought iron gate with a locking archway and a small plaque. Private park. Entry by permission only. Next came a mulch path. New benches and handmade wooden signs with fun names like Dragon Hill and Butterfly Field. A local artist volunteered to paint a mural on the back of the park wall. Children playing beneath trees, laughing in bold, brilliant color. Karen came by nearly every day, watching like a hawk, her expressions growing more twisted with each new update, but she never spoke. Not once. Not after the second surveyor flagged her own property line, revealing that the small strip of land she'd used as a personal flower bed was actually part of my new parcel. Neighbors began to whisper. Then they began to ask questions, and then, one by one, they began to visit. It started with one mom and her toddler timidly stepping through the gate after I waved them in. Then another family. Then 3. By the end of the week, the park was full again, kids laughing, parents smiling, the air electric with joy. It was exactly what it had been before, only this time, safe from sabotage. That Saturday, I hosted a grand reopening, homemade cookies, lemonade, a sign-in sheet, and waiver form at the gate to satisfy insurance. People came in droves. The kids played harder than I'd seen in months, as if reclaiming every stolen minute. Karen stood on the sidewalk across the street, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Watching. I walked over with a cup of lemonade. "Would you like to come in?" I asked. Her nostrils flared. "This is ridiculous," I nodded slowly. "Maybe, but it's mine now. You can't run a public park on private land." "It's not public," I said. "And it's not a park. It's a privately owned play space with restricted access and liability waivers. Perfectly legal." I checked. "You're making a mockery of this neighborhood." "No," I said, sipping the lemonade. "I'm saving it." I turned and walked back through the gate, the sound of children laughing behind me, the slam of her car door echoing down the block. I didn't need her approval. I had something better. I had my park. The sun had just begun its descent, casting golden streaks across the suburban sky, bathing the small neighborhood park in a warm, amber glow. Children's laughter rang out like music, echoing off swing chains and jungle gyms as parents chatted idly on nearby benches. The scent of fresh-cut grass mixed with the sweet aroma of blooming honeysuckle, a calm signal that spring had fully arrived. It was one of those perfect, ordinary afternoons, until everything changed. I was sitting on the weathered wooden bench beneath the big oak tree, sipping iced coffee and watching my twins, Mia and Jackson, build what they proudly called a leaf castle. Their hands were caked in dirt, their cheeks pink with joy, and for the first time all week they weren't glued to a screen. Around us, other kids ran wild in their beautiful chaos, playing tag, climbing trees, daring each other to jump off the lowest branch. It was messy, loud, imperfect, and perfect. And then she arrived. It started with a screech, not from a child, but from the tires of a pristine silver SUV that rolled to a dramatic stop next to the curb. The driver's side door flung open, and out stepped a woman in a visor, crisp white polo, and a scowl that could curdle milk. Her name was Karen, not just in the meme sense. Her actual name was Karen Jeffries, and she had lived 3 streets over for the last 4 years. We all knew her. We all tried to avoid her. She strutted into the park like she owned it, heels clicking against the cobblestone path, face pinched like she'd bitten a lemon. She stood with hands on hips, scanning the chaos like a general surveying a battlefield. Her eyes narrowed on the leaf castle, on my kids. "Excuse me," she barked, loud enough to halt every swing and silence every game. "Whose children are these?" I stood, blinking. "They're mine. Is there a problem?" Karen marched up, to me with the confidence of a traffic cop issuing a ticket. "They're digging holes in the ground," she said, aghast. "This isn't a sandbox, it's a public space." I looked over at the twins. They had stopped playing, sensing the shift in energy. Jackson grabbed his sister's hand. "They're not digging holes. They're just playing in the leaves," Karen sneered. "Leaves turn into mold. Mold triggers allergies. I happen to have very sensitive sinuses." I bit back a laugh. "They're kids. They're playing in a park." She wasn't amused. "This isn't a playground, it's a shared-use green space. I already called the city about it last week. It's supposed to be maintained, not turned into a dirt pit." "You called the city?" "I certainly did, and I'll do it again. Frankly, this place is an eyesore. There's no fence, no rules posted, children running unsupervised. It's dangerous and disruptive." A toddler began crying in the distance. Karen shot the mother a glare, as if the noise had proven her point. Several parents nearby had started inching closer, listening in with concern. Some looked furious. A few looked scared. I took a step toward her. "You don't get to decide who plays here, Karen." She raised a finger, wagging it like I was a student in detention. "Someone has to, because clearly no one else will. Just last week I saw a boy climb that oak tree. What if he fell? What if someone gets hurt and sues the city? You think taxes are high now? My heart pounded in my chest, more from rage than fear. This park has been here for decades. Kids have always played here. And now they won't, she said matter-of-factly. I've submitted a request to the HOA to formally close it until safety regulations are addressed. Fencing, signage, surveillance cameras. Until then, I suggest you find a safer place for your children to dig. Mia looked up at me, tears forming in her big brown eyes. Daddy, are we in trouble? Karen folded her arms triumphantly. Yes, sweetie, you are. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my molars might crack. Around us, the air had grown thick with tension. A few parents were whispering, others pulling their children away. The mood had soured. The joy of the afternoon had evaporated, replaced by confusion and helpless frustration. Karen turned on her heel and strutted back toward her SUV like a queen returning to her palace. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. As her tires squealed off into the distance, Mia and Jackson stood quietly beside me, still clutching hands. Their leaf castle, once a proud, childish fortress, had already started to collapse in. The breeze. Jackson looked up. Why is that lady so mean? I knelt beside them, my voice shaking. Sometimes people think they can control everything just because they don't like something. But they're wrong. Can we come back tomorrow? Hesitated. We'll see. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of my kids, eyes wide, joy stolen, played on repeat in my mind. This wasn't just about leaves or noise or even allergies. It was about power, about control, about someone deciding that children didn't belong in their own neighborhood. And something deep inside me cracked open. If Karen wanted to make this personal, fine. She had no idea who she was messing with. By the end of that week, the park was quiet. Unnaturally so. The laughter that once filled the air had vanished, replaced by a suffocating silence that hung like a heavy fog. A laminated sign was staked into the ground near the entrance, zip-tied to a makeshift post, temporarily closed for maintenance by order of the Homeowners Association. It wasn't just a sign, it was a message. One scrawled in petty authority, coated in Karen's perfume of control. Just like that, a place that once belonged to the community now stood empty, fenced off with flimsy orange netting and caution tape like it was some sort of crime scene. The twins didn't understand. Every day after school, they'd beg to go back, asking if the mean lady had gone away yet. It broke my heart to keep saying no, but every time we passed by, the tape was still there, fluttering in the wind like a warning flag. I tried reasoning. I called the HOA. After 3 redirects, I finally spoke to a man named Brent, who sounded no older than 25 and clearly had no idea what was going on. I mean, if it's marked for safety concerns, that's probably a good thing, right? He said through a mouthful of something crunchy. Better safe than sued. There's nothing unsafe about it, I snapped. It's a small community park, no equipment, no structures, just grass and trees. He sighed. Then someone probably filed a complaint. It's standard procedure. The board will review it at the next meeting. When is that? Next month. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. I wasn't the only one growing restless. A group of parents gathered at the coffee shop the following morning, frustrated, furious, but unsure what to do. Karen had struck a nerve no one thought existed. The park wasn't just a plot of land. It was where memories lived. First steps. First bike rides, summer water balloon wars, winter snowmen. It was woven into the fabric of our lives, and one woman had managed to unravel it with a single phone call. I heard she threatened to sue the HOA if they didn't act, one mom whispered. Said she slipped on a pine cone last month and blamed the lack of maintenance. She's weaponizing her allergy list, someone else added. Complained that grass clippings triggered her asthma. She's not even on this street, I muttered. She doesn't even use the park. It didn't matter. Karen was a master of manipulation. She knew the right pressure points to push, the right code violations to cite, the right language. to use in her emails. Liability, public safety, sanitation. Buzzwords that made otherwise reasonable people nervous. And she used them like a scalpel. Fueled by frustration, I decided to confront her. Not to yell, not to argue, just to understand. She answered her door wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a green smoothie. "Oh, it's you," she said, flatly. "I'd like to talk," I said, keeping my voice level. She sighed and stepped outside, crossing her arms. "If this is about the park, I'm not changing my stance. It's not your park. It's not yours either," she said, with a tight smile. "That's the problem." My fists clenched at my sides. You don't get to take something away from the entire community because you don't like the sound of kids playing. "I didn't take anything," she replied, as if she were giving a lecture. "I exercised my right as a homeowner to protect the value of our neighborhood. That park is a liability. It's unregulated, unmonitored, and frankly, an eyesore." I took a step forward. "It's where our children play. And now they'll have to find somewhere more appropriate," she said. "We're not savages. We don't let our children roll around in the dirt like feral animals." I stared at her in disbelief, my mouth opening but no words coming out. "You people are so emotionally attached to a pile of grass and leaves," she continued. "You'd think it was sacred ground or something. Newsflash, it's just land. And land can be managed." She walked back to her door and turned before going inside. "Some of us care about keeping this place civilized." The door clicked shut. I stood there for a full minute, absorbing what she'd said. Civilized, that was her angle. To her, children weren't symbols of life or joy. They were mess, noise, chaos. She wasn't just removing a playground. She was erasing what made our neighborhood feel alive. By the end of the week, another sign had gone up. No trespassing. Private maintenance in progress. That was the turning point. The line in the sand. A barrier not just physical, but ideological. I watched from across the street as Karen stood at the edge of the park one afternoon, sipping from a metal tumbler, sunglasses perched on her head, watching as parents drove by with kids frowning in the back seats. She looked smug, pleased, like a dictator surveying conquered land. And that's when it hit me. Everything she'd said, every smug word, every smug look, had one theme: ownership, control. She believed that because no one technically owned the park, she could fill that vacuum. That with the right paperwork and a few threats, she could bend it to her will. And she was right. For now. But if she wanted to make it about ownership, about land, title, and control, then maybe it was time someone beat her at her own game. The idea didn't come as a lightning bolt. It came as a slow, burning ember that refused to go out. Pulled out my phone. Opened the county assessor's site, typed in the parcel number listed on the no trespassing sign. And there it was. The land wasn't city-owned. It was privately owned. By someone who hadn't lived in the county for over a decade. Suddenly, Karen's smug expression rewound in my mind. Her laugh, her dismissiveness, the way she'd said, "It's not yours either." I stared at the screen, the ember now ablaze. She was right. But she wouldn't be for long. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Monday morning, I had 3 voicemails from Brent at the HOA and a certified letter on my doorstep, sealed and self-important. Inside, a cease and desist. They claimed I was operating an unauthorized recreational facility, that it violated zoning codes, disrupted neighborhood uniformity, and encouraged unsafe levels of traffic. The language was sterile, but the message was pure Karen. I could practically hear her smugness bleeding through the ink. What she didn't realize, however, was that I had done my homework. I responded with a letter of my own. Well, technically, my attorney's. A former classmate turned real estate lawyer, who was more than happy to send a little legal sunshine in return. We cited county property codes, land use allowances, and even zoning maps showing the area was classified as open use, private residential. Translation: nothing illegal about a homeowner letting friends play on his land. Karen wasn't going to win this with policy, and when that became clear, she switched tactics: public shame. It started on the neighborhood Facebook group. She posted a picture of the park gate with a caption drenched in venom. "So sad to see our quiet neighborhood turned into a circus. Some people don't care about safety, noise, or community standards. What's next? A bounce house and food trucks?" Shia wasn't subtle, nor were her followers, mostly the same people who had never once set foot in the park until it closed. The echo chamber filled with comments about entitlement, chaos, and how one man thinks he owns the block. But this time, she wasn't the only voice in the room. Parents fired back. Neighbors posted photos of their kids smiling under the mural, playing tag, learning to ride bikes. One dad wrote, "Funny how Karen never had a problem when the park was empty. Now it's alive and suddenly it's an issue." The post went semi-viral locally. People outside our neighborhood even chimed in, some amused, some inspired. One teacher commented, "We need 100 more dads like this." Karen deleted her original post the next day, but the damage was already done. To her, she tried one last move. The city inspection card. A white sedan showed up the following week. With a clipboard-wielding inspector and a tight schedule, he walked the perimeter, took notes, and asked a few questions. I was calm, confident, even offered him a lemonade. An hour later, he smiled and said, "Honestly, this is one of the best-kept properties I've seen. If every issue looked like this, my job would be a dream." I asked if there was a complaint on file. He gave me a tired smile. Anonymous tip, probably someone who's never picked up a rake in their life. Karen had gone all in and lost every hand, but she wasn't done yet. No, she saved her grand. Finale for the HOA's annual spring meeting. The whole neighborhood was there. Fold-out chairs, pitchers of water, clipboards and agendas. Karen sat near the front in a lemon-colored pantsuit, flanked by 2 board members she clearly thought were her allies. I sat in the back, silent, waiting. The meeting was dull at first. Budget reviews, landscaping contracts, mailbox repairs. Then, inevitably, Karen stood up. Her voice rang out like she was holding court. "I believe we need to take immediate action regarding the misuse of private land for unregulated public gatherings," she began. "This is not a community center. This is a neighborhood. We have rules for a reason." People shifted in their seats. Eyes darted to me. Karen went on. "Children are noisy. Traffic has increased. Property values could be affected. And frankly, it sets a dangerous precedent. What if everyone just started converting their yards into parks and playgrounds? What kind of chaos would that be?" The room fell still. For a second, it seemed like she had them. Until I stood up. I walked slowly to the front, every step measured. I held nothing but a folder and a calm expression. "I wasn't going to say anything tonight," I said, voice level. But since the subject came up, I opened the folder. Inside, copies of the deed, zoning clearance, liability waivers, photos of the new improvements, and 2 letters from nearby homeowners stating their support for the park. I purchased the land legally. I maintain it myself. I allow access only with permission. Everything has been done within city and county guidelines. I turned to the room. More importantly, the space brings joy. For our kids, for our families, for our community. I didn't build a stadium. I preserved what was already there and gave it back. Karen opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "Oh, and one more thing." I held up a printed screenshot from her since-deleted Facebook post. Attempting to slander a private citizen while simultaneously trying to manipulate HOA policy for personal preference, and that's against HOA ethics. I handed it to the board president. Silence. Karen's expression cracked. Her confident mask shattered in real time, right in front of everyone. She stood frozen, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Then someone clapped, then another. Soon the room erupted into applause. Not thunderous, but enough to make her sit down, enough to make it clear she had lost, completely, publicly. The board moved on to the next topic without another word. Karen didn't speak again for the rest of the meeting. She avoided eye contact, hands clenched in her lap. I walked home that night with a lighter step than I'd had in months. As I passed the park, The mural shimmered under the street lamp, and the wind carried the faint sound of laughter from a family playing catch on the hill. It was ours again, not just the land, but the spirit of it. A few days later, someone added a sticker to the park sign, a small vinyl decal with bold black letters, Karen-proofed zone. I left it there, felt like the perfect finishing touch.